Kamala Harris's candidacy has a serious identity crisis. She's been in the national media for a few months now, and I still, as someone who is an avid follower of U.S. politics, cannot figure out what kind of candidate she's trying to be. Is she trying to run in the moderate lane or the progressive lane? So far, it seems to me like she's trying to pass herself off as an Obama-like candidate, but so far she's coming across much more like Hillary Clinton, which I'm sure is unintentional. I mean, just look at how she flubbed that Breakfast Club interview. It reminds me of when Hillary Clinton was on with a local black DJ, and they asked her, "What's something you never leave the house without?" And she said, "Hot sauce, friggin' hot sauce." And then when they asked her if she was pandering, she asked, "Is it working?" Now it's hard to top that interview in terms of tone deafness, but Harris tried to do that this week on the Breakfast Club when they asked her if she'd ever smoked weed, and she said, "Oh yeah, back in college, yeah." However, she neglected to mention to these people that it was her job for many, many years to put people who smoked weed in prison. How can someone sleep at night knowing that they ruined many, many people's lives for committing the same exact act that they committed themselves in college? Does Harris not realize how insulting it is to people for her to come out as, I mean, she can't escape her legacy as sort of as somewhat a law and order candidate, because she was a prosecutor for her entire career until she ran for the Senate. It was her job to put people in prison, and she put people in prison for something that apparently she thought was morally acceptable enough to do herself. Now, if she were an honorable woman, she would have admitted this a long time ago and tried to take and turned herself into the police and taken the sentence. But did she? No, because she lives by different rules. Kamala Harris is a narc, and she always will be. If you needed any proof of that, you could look to her response to the CIA's attempt at regime change in Venezuela. She's been completely silent on that. She's totally content with serving the establishment so long as she's able to look pretty on TV and get elected. However, no honest leftist would ever be elected president or even run for president without taking on the intelligence community and the foreign policy establishment. I mean, that really is the biggest fissure between the Democratic establishment and the left progressives who are taking them on. Now, if Kamala wants to run as a Joe Lieberman moderate, well, then she should come right out and say that she's all for regime change. She shouldn't play this mousy game where she refuses to answer the question and doesn't talk about it. Whose side is she on? Is she on the side of the warmongers or on the peaceniks? War is not the only issue she's had trouble taking a position on, but also if you look at Bernie's Medicare for All program, which was quickly endorsed, at least nominally, by most of the candidates in the race, including Kamala and Booker and just about everybody else I can think of. Harris, at least, however, clearly did not think this went through, because as soon as she was challenged and realized that there are some people in America who maybe don't like the idea of the government nationalizing the insurance industry and all private insurance going away, she very quickly backed off of this proposal. Now, does that mean that she didn't read and didn't understand what the term Medicare for All implied? Or does it just mean that she doesn't believe in anything at all and that she's just trying to go with whatever she thinks popular? Could it be that Ms. Harris doesn't have any ideas of her own, and she's just willing to copy the homework of the other Democrats who seem to have found something that people latch onto? Now, that's not necessarily a failing strategy. I mean, that's kind of the Henry Ford idea. You take a little bit of what works from everybody, and then you put it together into a single product, and then you all of a sudden have the best mousetrap on the market. If Harris took all the most popular positions from all the other Democrats running, that would be a very lucrative strategy, I think. However, she has to make it seem like she's not doing that. She has to make it seem like those are her honest opinions, because people do not like liars, especially, I think we learned that after 2016, that the disingenuous types, like Hillary, are far less favorable and endearing to the average American than the more honest, or at least appearingly honest, or brutally honest types like Bernie or Trump. The latest example of Harris's lack of honesty, I'd say, would be in the wake of what's happened over the weekend with Jussie Smollett. Since it has come out now that Jussie Smollett apparently, it seems almost certain, hoaxed his attack, I would think if I were Kamala Harris, I would be furious because Kamala Harris used Jesse and Cory Booker both used Jesse Smollett as his case as an example of why the Senate needs to pass their anti-lynching bill. Now, if you use a case that turns out to be a hoax as a justification to pass a bill, then you look like a fool. And I would be furious at Smollett for embarrassing me that way in public. Now, Harris, maybe she's just trying to do damage control and hope nobody remembers. That's one strategy. But still, if I were in her position, if she were a genuine person, I think it would be quite endearing to a lot of people to see her come out and take him on publicly for what happened, and for her to take that personally. I find that righteous indignation is quite endearing to voters. I think we've learned that a lot over the last 10 years. Politicians who are not necessarily the most measured but the most passionate tend to respond well with voters, because it turns out voters don't think in focus grouped terms either. I think Harris was at her strongest during the Kavanaugh hearings, when she came across very strong against him and very passionate. That kind of passion is something you need. Now, in the last few months, since then, really, Harris has come across as kind of a dead fish with no real set beliefs. In the Kavanaugh hearings, it was very clear that she thought Kavanaugh was a bad man and she wanted to stop bad men from doing bad things. Okay? That's a good and evil story. People can get on board with that. So in sum, if Harris wants to have a chance in 2020, she really needs to clean up her act and make sure that she figures out who she wants to be. Is she a narc? Is she a progressive? What is she? But whatever she is, she needs to make sure that she is strong in her foundations, and that she's passionate about what she stands for, and that she actually stands for what she believes in. If you've made it this far, however, please consider subscribing, and please do like this video if you found anything of what I've said insightful. I'll have daily videos from here on out, and I'll see you later.